Everybody needs to understand their job and, really importantly, what done right means for you. As your portfolio grows, those operational needs, they become more complex. You have to use technology to control and automate your workflows. Technology is a key to help you sort of deliver on that promise of hospitality to your guests.
How can hosts improve operations without hiring a huge team? What are the common operational mistakes that property managers are making? And how can you balance automation and the human touch when running short-term rentals? Jeremy Gall from Breezeway is the special guest on today's Host Planet podcast, and he'll be tackling all these issues during an action-packed episode. Jeremy, thank you for joining us on the Host Planet podcast. How can hosts improve their mid-stay and post-stay operations without hiring a huge team?
Yeah, it's a great question, James. Thanks for having me. The industry is built on operations and the network of people who serve these properties and these guests. Operations, it's a loaded term, but it consists of hundreds of invisible details that go into creating a five-star stay before, during, and after the guests arrive. Guests only see what's on the surface, and there's hundreds of details behind that. But, as your portfolio grows, those operational needs, they become more complex. I think the good news is you really don't need to have a huge team, but you do need to have a smart system. So a few ways, here's like sort of 4 ways I think you think about improving operations efficiently. The first is documenting all the property details from the house layout, the make and model of appliances. This will help everybody who's in your properties really understand what's going on. Next, if you focus on proactive communication, really giving your guests the information they need so that they can be ready to understand what the home is about, and you're in a good position to respond to issues when they arise. Next, I think even if your team is small, you think about setting clear expectations and accountability for everyone, whether this is a cleaner, a service partner, a repair person. Everybody needs to understand their job and, really importantly, what done right means for you. What's it mean for your brand? Because it's different for everybody else. And then lastly, you standardize processes around turnovers, preventative maintenance, home safety, and you really lean into consistency as king. So when you do that, you can it's been amazing, and how do you do this without burning out? I think is really the question. Is like you have to use technology to control and automate your workflows. Technology is a key to help you sort of deliver on that promise of hospitality to your guests.
Yeah, it's interesting you say there about having all the data and all the information about your property and all the appliances. I was just talking to Jay from Hostfully, and they're running an AI kind of communications tool. And he was saying, an AI will only be as good as the data that you give it. So if you have all that data, the AI can kind of pick from it. If not, then it's not going to have much data to play with. So yeah, having all that data there is just so important.
100%. And I think that consistency, it's that data, and not only having the data, but then making sure you have it in like a structured way is really the key to how you get this done.
So what are the most common operational mistakes that you're seeing STR hosts and managers making?
Well, there's a lot. I think it's easy to make mistakes here. This is it's a business where what's special about short-term rentals and vacation rentals very often is the uniqueness of the property, where it's located. These are special homes and special places. That uniqueness makes them a challenge to think about how you drive that brand consistency and a really predictable experience to the guest. So I think too often people spend a lot of time focusing on reservations, booking, and pricing. It's important, but they sort of overlook the crucial work that is like how this is being done. And I think the biggest mistake is that operations can be undervalued. Building and scaling a profitable team and a management business, even if you're going from 2 to 6 properties, the importance of operations can't really be overstated. And so I think the real thing is you can choose how you do the work. You can choose to do it in a smarter way. You can throw out the spreadsheets and the cleaning schedule, delete WhatsApp chains, stop waiting for appliances to break, and hope isn't a strategy. You can't just hope that everything's going to be done right. And this is where technology can really help. Hospitality is hard work, but it doesn't have to feel quite so hard. And I think most people don't lean in far enough to think about how can they leverage technology to sort of smooth over these operational pitfalls, because there's 100 things that can go wrong on every stay, every time.
Yeah, too right. I mean, hope isn't a strategy like you mentioned there. And doing what I do sometimes when you get a call from a number that you don't know, you think, oh gosh, is this a guest? I don't really know what has gone wrong. I don't want to know what's gone wrong. That's not the best way to do it. Okay, real talk now for all you hosts out there. You know that moment when your guest messages you again with, hey, what's the Wi-Fi code? Or you're staring at 5 different calendars, wondering if you've accidentally double booked the cottage. Yes. We've all been there. That's why here at Host Planner, we recommend Hostfully. It's basically your rentals control center. It handles bookings across all the big platforms, syncs your calendars to ensure there are no double bookings, automates guest messages, and even creates these really slick digital guidebooks that stop all the repeat questions. Honestly, it just makes your life easier and keeps your guests happier, helping you achieve those all-important 5-star reviews. And here is a little bonus. If you're a Host Planet listener, you can get $500 off onboarding for Hostfully's property management software and 30% off digital guidebooks for life. Just hit the link in the show notes and use the codes PLANET500 for the PMS and HostPlanetGB for the guidebooks. And if you'd like a proper walkthrough, there's also a link to book a demo with Frank Bosey from Hostfully. He will show you how it all works. Less stress, more bookings, sorted with Hostfully. If people are starting out and maybe they've got a few properties, but they know they want to scale and they've got to get their operations running smoothly, what's your top tips for kind of starting that process?
Yeah, I think my top tips really are, first, you have to understand what it is that you do that's really special, and then lean into that. And I think map out the customer journey. We talk to a lot of clients about this. Map out that guest journey and all of those touch points, and then think about where it is that you want to put in additional human effort and what parts of this do you really want to optimize. And do you want to automate? Where can you automate where the guest still feels really supported, and you're not really having to spend a lot of human time and human capital there? And where should you lean in that journey and really focus on the human touch? Because hospitality is human. And I think once you've done that and you've sort of mapped out the guest journey and all of these different touch points, and what your system is for that, and then which ones will be automated, which ones will be even more human, I think then you look at the tools that you use and the teams that you use to support that journey, and how do you optimize each piece of that? And I think far too often people don't take a step back to sort of look at that big picture and think about what are they truly trying to accomplish, and how does it all tie together, and then which pieces do they focus on first to optimize?
Makes a lot of sense there. I mean, you mentioned the automation angle, the human touch. How do you get that balance right between those two angles?
Yeah, it's tricky, right? I think the industry is built on operations and the people who serve. You can't get away from the human element. Humans are necessary to get the actual work done, right? And it's not just about technology, and it's not just about processes. Really, you're doing these things, you're looking at technology for the sake of the people who provide service, and they're providing service in order to create that feeling of hospitality. I think that's the key. And when you take that larger perspective, technology is to enable the people to get the work done, to then create hospitality. Then you think, okay, great. Where does automation play in that? And am I using automation to help make the people that are actually delivering service, whether it's just even myself, right? If I'm a host and I've got one property, Am I using that technology to like automate some things for myself, so that then I can be more human in other ways? Or am I really using that to just enable one of my service providers or my team or my staff, if I'm a bigger organization, to be able to do that? And I think that's the trick. I think the industry is very enamored, understandably so, with automation and the role of AI and how this continues to sort of change. But I think it can be too tempting to forget that hospitality is personal, and it is human. And you really can't, I guess it would be lovely to automate away all of that on some level. But I feel like it's unrealistic. It's very, very transparent to guests, right? When things have been too automated. And that doesn't feel great. That doesn't feel like a hospitality experience.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the guests, they still really appreciate some kind of human involvement. I think sometimes it depends on the age profile of your guests, but I find a lot of people, if you meet them, if you pick up the phone, whatever, if there's some kind of interaction, it really does go down much better. In terms of proactive guest communication, how important is this, and how does a tool like Breezeway support it?
Yeah, proactive communication is really, I think it's super important. I think it sort of sets the standard for the guest experience. And I would say, like, taking a step back, one of the things that I feel like still holds the industry back a little bit is this unpredictable nature of short-term rentals, right? I've booked, I'm excited for my trip. And then it's a couple of days before my trip, or maybe maybe I'm on the drive there, or I just landed. And then there's this overwhelming like trepidation, right? And a little bit of fear of, oh my God, is it going to look like it did in the photos? What's going to happen when I get there? The bed's actually going to be comfortable, or the sheet's going to feel weird? Are they going to be, maybe I'm projecting. But I think this is truly what kind of holds us back as an industry a little bit. There's this level of unpredictability. And I think proactive communication can play such an important role in helping alleviate some of those concerns and helping guests feel more comfortable before they come. So that then what you're doing is you're setting the whole experience up kind of on the right foot, right? Like, when I start and I'm feeling anxious about what the place might be like, what this home might be like when I get there, or this apartment, then my radar is like really up, right? When I walk in, and I'm probably a little judgy as I look around, right? Because I'm anxious and I'm trying to understand what's going on. The more I'm at ease through proactive communication, that just changes the dynamic. I feel comfortable. I know what to expect. And I think you don't need to always do that in a personal manner. You can automate. We've seen a lot of clients, and we help a lot of clients have a lot of success automating those types of messages, which is like, it's a day before you're arriving. James, let me tell you about the property. Let me give you more details about it so you understand what's happening. What kind of coffee maker is there? What can you expect on check-in? Here's how you get in, etc. It's the day of. I'm helping make sure you feel pretty good. It's right after check-in. I want to understand whether or not everything is presented the way that you thought it was. Like, James, is this how's your stay? Is it off to a good start? Give me a 1 through 5 so that I know, and then I can be reactive, right? And so I think the proactive nature puts you in a better position to then be really attentive to a guest throughout the stay. And that's the key piece. And it goes back to what you said, also goes back to the data. Like, the better data profile you have in our position is really that, like, operations is what drives the guest experience. The home has to be clean. It has to be well presented. It should be safe. You should have done all the right preventative maintenance. Those should be like the baseline that you know you're operating to. But by doing that and collecting that information, then finding ways where you can proactively share it with the guest to an appropriate level, right? Through a guest guidebook or through messaging, you can really do a lot to change the dynamic of how guests arrive and begin their sort of journey with you.
What do you think is the optimum guest communication kind of proactive strategy? What does that look like in terms of like how many messages you send and when you send them in order to build that trust and make sure that people are expecting and that they know it's going to be a good experience and they're not worried about it like you were saying?
Yeah, I think it's about 3 messages probably separate from the booking confirmation. So, right, let's take the booking confirmation aside. Clearly, once you've booked, you need to go through some communication so people understand, like, this is a real booking, you've got it, this place is set. Now you're approaching the trip, and I think it's really like day before, or a couple of days before, we're excited to have you. Here's what you can expect. It's day of, and then it's day after arrival. I think those 3 messages are really critical to understand, first, to alleviate concerns up front. And then number 2, you really need to understand how your team is performing and how you're performing. And like, so did you get it all right? Is this guest off to a good start? Maybe they're a little more, maybe they're needy. Guests are pretty needy. Owners are needy. Humans are needy. But maybe they need a little more attention, right? Maybe they are confused about how the oven works or the fireplace or whatever, something like that. Very common, right? So I think that check-in, 3 of those messages we find really helps. Depending on the length of stay, you're sending another proactive message, maybe halfway through, checking in. If somebody's only with you for 3 days, that feels like overkill. But the key is that text messaging is, SMS is such a beautiful, non-intrusive medium for this. If I called you 3 times on your vacation, James, I think you probably wouldn't pick up the 3rd time, unless there was real trouble, right? You'd be like, hey, leave me alone. I really don't want to talk to you, right? But I send you 3 text messages on your vacation. It's so unobtrusive. It's asynchronous. You don't feel like you have to reply right away. When you do, you don't expect I'm going to answer right away either. It's like just a beautiful medium for that kind of interaction. And yet you feel like I'm thinking about you, which I am.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to communicate. And we saw in your guest communication tips recently for 2025, one of the tips was guests and owners like to communicate over WhatsApp. And I certainly do. And, whenever I communicate with my guests, I say, look, here's my WhatsApp number. If you need anything, here I am. And another thing as well that got me thinking, if you send that message shortly after check-in, it can sometimes get rid of those issues later down the line, because sometimes a guest will come and there'll be an issue, but they won't raise it. They won't say anything about it. And you don't hear about it as a host until you see it in the review. And if you were proactive with your guest communication, it can sometimes make sure that you're getting that 5-star review, right? Because you can put it right straight away.
Yeah, 100%. And then I think the key, we believe that during that stay, the byproduct of your communication with that guest turns into operational work, and that's part of the strategy, right? That's part of why we built operations, and then we built messaging and a guidebook, and we tie them together so that when you are messaging and communicating with a client, you can get the full context of your operations behind it. So you may have an issue, like if I'm going to ask you if everything's okay, occasionally you're going to tell me that it isn't. And that there's something I need to do about it, right? And the byproduct of that communication is operational work that we need to take on. I can't ask you if everything's okay, and then you tell me no, and then I don't do anything about it, right? I mean, then I'm really failing the guest at that point. And so making sure that you can have that communication tied to your operations, use AI to make it more efficient. We found that this is a game changer for the way that people operate.
100%. The 2 messages I had recently, in one property, they'd run out of forks. They only had 2 forks left. Not sure how that happened. And in the other one, it was wine glasses. There was only 1 wine glass left. So had to buy some more wine glasses. I don't know where cutlery goes. I think people must be taking it with them. But anyway.
Yeah. Wrapped up in sheets and towels and the linens that also disappear.
Something like that. All right, then, Jeremy, just tell us more about Breezeway then. How do you help hosts and property managers?
Yeah, it's simple. It's a simple way to describe it, but the work of it is challenging. We want to make it easier for people who deliver hospitality to get that work done. And that's hard work. It takes a combination of the host or the manager at the very top and service providers and staff across multiple disciplines, really doing work in a timely manner and making sure that it's done with a level of attention to detail that is really high, because that's what it takes to deliver a hospitality experience. And so it's about helping you organize your tasks, your maintenance schedules, and then automate all the what is often unexciting but essential tasks that boil up to really executing on hospitality. And when clients lean into that and then understand how to sort of pull that together and understand the value of optimizing their operations and like their guest experience, hospitality teams are happier. They're more efficient. They're able to use data to make better decisions, and less things fall through the cracks. So with more accountability and a better system, you end up really executing more on the hospitality mission that we're all trying to deliver, right? Like that's the idea. It's just make sure that we have happy guests. If we have portfolios with multiple owners, we want to have very happy owners and make sure the owners understand all the work that we do.
What convinced you to start Breezeway, and how has the business evolved over the years?
I had started a business called FlipKey. It was a vacation rental marketplace. So I had exposure and made friends with thousands of property managers around the world through that business. I got really familiar with how they operated. And I felt like improved property service would require a different sort of system, a little different than maybe the property management system or something else, which was like very forward about property data and like what characteristics were in the property. Is there a hot tub? What's the size of the lawn? Tell me about your air filters. The more we could learn about the property and the more we could learn about how you were trying to execute to what standard of service, both for your owners and guests, we could build a system that really helped you execute on that. We initially called it property care software because we thought that relationship with the property was like really, really important. And since then, we've connected operations deeper to the guest experience and to guest tools like messaging and welcome books and after hours call support. And we keep adding more of these products. So it's evolved over time, but basically I felt that what we do as hosts and managers who are serving a guest and trying to deliver up this hospitality experience, it really is service. And service in the field is becoming more challenging. It's harder to do. Guest expectations are much harder. And it can be a challenge to differentiate yourself unless you're really good at that boots on the ground type of workflow. So I felt we could really help people there. And so now it's grown into the leading operations and guest experience platform. We've helped people do unbelievably like 70 million tasks across more than 350,000 properties globally. And it's a lot of fun.
That's a lot of tasks as well. What trends in STR tech are exciting you most right now?
Yeah, I think this combination, we talked a little bit about it, but I think this combination of one trend is like automation and the human element. And like where you draw that line, I think in property tech and in STR, like everything is turning into hospitality, right? Short-term, long-term, student housing. Property tech is turning into hospitality, and how you deliver hospitality and that balance of automation and human effort, that balance of AI and personalization, I think is really fascinating. And the future of hospitality will be defined by the balance between those two, and leveraging more that you know about the guest and how you work truly deliver like a personalized experience. I think it's going to be really interesting. So that's what I spend most of my time thinking about.
How do you see AI evolving within day-to-day operations? I mean, obviously you've got AI guest communication and all sorts now, but how do you see it having an impact on what you're doing?
I think there's just a huge opportunity for AI to permeate. AI should be permeating all of the software tools that we use, and it is. And I expect we would just see that more and more, from email to anything else that you do. And your operations and guest platform is no different. And so I think the ability for AI to help make smarter staffing decisions, help make sure that you stay on top of recurring maintenance. We use things like very smart systems to do, like if I know you need to do something every 60 days, but then there's a reservation that comes in, just helping you automatically move that to the next available day when that person is available. Like, that sounds very mundane, but you start to add up a few of those little stories over and over again, and the collective body of work really changes the amount of time that an operator needs to think about what is going on in the field. And so I think it's about smarter decisions. And we're spending a lot of resources thinking about it, not just in guest communications, but across the operations platform.
Going to be interesting to see how things develop. Okay, then, Jeremy, we've got a few questions to finish. What's your favorite brand in the STR space, apart from Breezeway, of course?
I think Casago is doing something. Casago here in the US is doing something, and in Mexico is doing something like really interesting. The franchise model, and we're seeing this in some other parts of the world as well, and with some other companies. That franchise model is really fascinating because of local operators who really care. I think the industry has learned that local operators and local brands win the day. And so I'm really excited to see how some of these companies lean into that over the next couple of years, and what that does for the industry.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. We'll see how that develops. An individual in the STR space you'd like to give a shout out to?
Oh, wow. Other than you, James, many years ago, I've known this individual for a long time. Tim Cafferty from Outer Banks Blue in North Carolina here in the States is just one of the kindest, most unassuming professional operators who just does it right and cares about his craft and his team, and I think just runs a remarkable business, and has done so for quite a long time. So I'd give a shout out to my friend Tim and his business at Outer Banks Blue.
Great shout out for Tim there. Final question then. Number one thing you would change about the STR space if you could?
Ooh, this is a hard question. I think it's about more predictability and sort of the level of quality between operators, higher standards and safer properties for guests. I think this is what will drive the industry forward. This will bring more guests. This will drive up ADR. It'll reduce pressure on regulation because we'll have better actors in the space. And it'll really usher in the next wave of maturity and growth to the market. This is what guests want. It's what owners want. The community where you operate and you have these and have your, short-term rental home, and the managers. This is what everyone wants. I think we just have to. I'm excited for, if I could snap my fingers and make it happen now, I would. But I think it's happening slowly. It's an evolution of professionalism, which leads to predictability and sort of higher quality baseline standards. But I'm very interested to see that develop over the next few years, and how that propels our industry forward.
And then you won't have to worry what your vacation rental looks like, will you?
You won't be quite so concerned, yes.
Jeremy, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for joining us on the Host Planet podcast.
James, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Great to chat to Jeremy Gall there from Breezeway about how to supercharge your STR operations. All right, that's it for today's episode. Remember, this podcast is brought to you in collaboration with Hostfully, which is trusted by short-term rental professionals across the globe. As a House Planet listener, you get 2 exclusive offers: $500 off onboarding for Hostfully's property management software. Just use the code PLANET500, and 30% off digital guidebooks for life using the code HousePlanetGB. To grab these deals, click the link in the show notes or head to housefully.com. For more free education, tips and trends from the STR industry, visit houseplanet.club, where you can sign up for our newsletter, listen to our podcasts, and download a suite of ebooks for hosts and property managers. That's it for today's episode. Until next time, happy hosting.